industry is under pressure to reduce its carbon footprint.
Major sectors that comprise 30% of the global emissions.
The degree to which economic growth is dependent on the Earth's resources has reached a level that's unsustainable and it's at a tipping point.
The risk is that the fourth industrial revolution is making inequality, which is already a big issue, even worse.
We may be shaping a future of manufacturing that works just for a few.
When the world was skeptical, we were not. Since 2017, the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit has convened world leaders and decision makers in over 20 countries. Led by a shared vision, the United Arab Emirates and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization came together to drive innovation in manufacturing, promote economic prosperity, and advance inclusive and sustainable industrial development. This is more than a summit. It is a platform driven by impact, fostering innovation and saving lives. Today, we convene once more, united by a common purpose to forge a future where innovation and sustainability are the foundations of our global industrial landscape. Welcome to the GMIS special event at COP28 UAE.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all and apologies for making you wait a little bit. I'm profoundly honored to host this special event for the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit at the UAE Pavilion in the Blue Zone at COP28, in the presence of our co-chairs, the Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology, and His Excellency Gerd Muller, the Director General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Thank you for being with us today. In an era where climate change and industrial growth are deeply linked, our meeting here at COP28 isn't just timely, it's imperative, because the path to industrial advancement and economic development cannot continue in the absence of environmental responsibility. The significance of our convergence today cannot be overstated. This COP has already shown itself to be a milestone event, marked by an exceptional turnout of global leaders and days filled with productive and inspiring discussions and commitments towards net zero. And manufacturers should not be immune to these commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, manufacturing, considering its entire value chain, stands as the world's single largest employer. It's the most significant contributor to global GDP and has an unparalleled multiplier effect on economies worldwide. This sector remains a vital force in both advanced and developing economies. I recall a profound statement, actually my favorite quote when it comes to summarizing the importance of manufacturing, by the previous Director General of UNIDO, His Excellency Lee Yong, who once said, and I quote, "There is not a single country in this world that has reached a high stage of economic and social development without having developed an advanced industrial sector," end of quote. This vision is one that the United Arab Emirates and UNIDO deeply share. It is this shared vision that has brought the United Arab Emirates and UNIDO together to co-chair the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit, which has convened heads of state, ministers, leaders of governments, Fortune 500 companies, and international bodies to drive comprehensive industry-wide dialogue that fosters innovation, decarbonizes industries, and promotes a circular economy. Over the years, the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit has become so much more than an international flagship event. It is about uniting stakeholders to launch initiatives with tangible impacts for our world, like the Mohammed bin Rashid Initiative for Global Prosperity, which we launched in 2017, which invites startups and innovators from all over the world to solve real-world challenges affecting people's lives. Or the Global Initiative for Industrial Safety, which we launched in 2019, aimed at elevating safety in manufacturing facilities and saving lives. Or the UNIDO Industrial Readiness Center, which is set to open in Abu Dhabi in 2025, a direct response to the pivotal role that manufacturers played during the global pandemic. Today, it has been clear that we cannot rely on old responses. Our environment calls for collaboration, for global initiatives and actions like the Abu Dhabi Declaration, which was launched at the UNIDO General Conference in 2019 in Abu Dhabi, urging public and private sectors to embrace new technologies and innovative collaborations to address global challenges. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of why we are here today and what the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit fundamentally represents: a collaborative network of global leaders united to address the pressing challenges of our time. On that note, I'm excited to announce two transformative initiatives that coincide with COP28 and underscore our commitment towards a sustainable world. Can we play the video, please?
In a world driven by industry, our future hangs in a delicate balance. Today, we face a pivotal moment in our journey to net zero. As it stands, industry contributes 30% of global direct greenhouse emissions. 54% of the world's energy is consumed by our industries. And in a single year, over 13.2 gigatons of waste were generated. The impact is undeniable, the challenge immense. But within this challenge lies an unparalleled opportunity. Imagine a world where economic prosperity coexists with environmental stewardship. This is not just a vision, it's a possibility waiting to be realized. Introducing World Industrial Day. A day to celebrate, to innovate, and to inspire. We will raise awareness, showcase global climate action efforts, and build a network of sustainability champions. We will recognize those at the forefront of the global green agenda and invite startups and innovators to reshape our world. World Industrial Day is more than a celebration. It's a call to action. Join us in making World Industrial Day a catalyst for change, for an inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, World Industrial Day is a global movement towards inclusive and sustainable industrial development. This day will be dedicated to promoting sustainable practices, celebrating the industrial sector's crucial role in global economies, and raising awareness to inspire a balance between economic prosperity and environmental stewardship. We will work together with our co-chairs to officially register World Industrial Day within the United Nations system, and will celebrate this day annually, starting with the 2024 edition of the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit, which will be held in Abu Dhabi next year. The second initiative is the Climate Action Initiative. For us to successfully transform the industrial sector, we must create an ecosystem that fosters innovation. The Climate Action Initiative will support startups and innovators through their journeys. We will work with UNIDO to identify global challenges. We will invite startups and innovators from all over the world to come forward with solutions. We will collaborate with incubators and accelerators like Hub 71 in Abu Dhabi to guide, mentor, and support the most promising solutions. We will team up with VentureSouk to scale these solutions, and we will cooperate with the UAE Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology and the UNIDO Investment, Technology and Promotion Offices to help commercialize and deploy these solutions where they are needed most. These two initiatives, World Industrial Day and the Climate Action Initiative, mark a significant step towards building a better future during this critical decade that demands bold climate action. As we navigate COP28, let us unite in our commitment to turn ambitions into action, pledges into purposeful progress, and innovation into scalable solutions. Thank you very much, And I would now like to welcome His Excellency Director General to the stage for a photo opportunity. His Excellency Omar as well, the Deputy Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology, and Sonia Weymuller, the founding partner at Venture Souk. Your Excellency. Speakers and panelists to the stage for a group photo op, and then we will move into our panels. Thank you. Okay. Keep it on. 5 minutes? Yeah? No need. 0. Yes, let them bring it. We'll just be setting up the stage for the panel discussions, and we'll start in 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to now introduce a very dear friend, a partner of the Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit since 2016, Danny Seabright, the president of the US-UAE Business Council. Danny, the stage is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And it truly has been an honor to be a partner to GMIS since its very beginning. I'll never forget the first meeting we had with GMIS in Abu Dhabi and participating in various meetings since then, including at the UN in New York and some of the discussions to how to move this very important topic along. Today, we're here for a fireside chat, first with Dorothy McCullough, who's a special representative for global partnerships at the U.S. Department of State. At COP28, key stakeholders are stressing the importance of public-private partnerships built around climate action. Partnerships bring civil society, the public sector, private sector, and communities together to generate lasting impacts in the fight against climate change. For key sectors such as manufacturing, PPPs can help accelerate technological innovation and needed investment. Mrs. McCullough it was appointed by President Biden to be special representative to lead the Office of Global Partnerships in the United States Department of State in June of 2022. Her office directly supports the Biden administration's commitment to the U.S. global leadership by assembling public-private partnerships to advance key national security and foreign policy priorities. Special Representative McCullough leads on partnership-building efforts that achieve the administration's policy objectives and goals. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to ask Special Representative McCullough to say a few words about her role, the role of her office, and what she's doing here at COP. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Danny. Please, is this on?
There we go. It is.
No, it is. Oh, thank you. No, is it? Okay. Anyway, wonderful to be here, Your Excellencies. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here in Dubai, COP28, Conference of the Parties, delegates, and all the stakeholders here. It's a very energizing event around action, climate action, and that is the focus of my office's work here, is public-private partnerships, and leveraging the private sector to work with government to help us achieve our strategic climate priority goals. We work across the administration, my office works across the administration's priorities, and there are many related to critical minerals, supply chains, all of those things that Danny mentioned and that here GMIS is focused on. And we know that harnessing the private sector is really critical, important goal of government, because we know that government can't achieve its priorities alone. So leveraging innovation, leveraging resources, leveraging talent, innovation is a really strategic priority and goal for the Biden administration. We do this in a number of ways related to climate. We have a partnership with the ITC, where we're helping build a platform for small, medium enterprises who are focused on climate and resilience and net zero, third-party certifications, sourcing for larger companies who are looking for products and services who fit the bill in terms of their climate goals and requirements. So that's one partnership that we're very proud of and continue to work on and to build with the International Trade Center. We also are focused here on climate entrepreneurship, and we have hubs across the developing world where we focus on innovation and supporting climate entrepreneurs. We just launched one in Nairobi last week. We have one in Vietnam, in Hanoi, South America. So looking to build partnerships with the private sector to help support climate entrepreneurs around the world. There's no end to the strategic goals and priorities that we have in the world today. And so launching and working with in terms of implementation, government can't just be focused on building policies. We have to work with the private sector to build policies that work and then focus on implementation.
So GMIS has made a hallmark of its effort to be just that, to focus on, to bring industry together, to work with government to solve some of these problems for the future. Can you give us some examples of why public-private partnerships matter when shaping the future of infrastructure and manufacturing development so much? I mean, and as it pertains to sustainability, why is this so important?
Well, It's so important for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, we just can't do it alone, right? So the challenges are too great. For instance, thinking about Ukraine and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the rebuilding and reconstruction that will need to take place and is taking place in the moment, but looking towards the future, we want to work with the private sector in Ukraine and with other interested stakeholders and parties to do that sustainably, because we have this opportunity and this necessity to do it well and to do it right. And so I look to the audience, I see our partner GE here. Those types of multinational corporations that have expertise and incredible bandwidth to help us achieve such a daunting challenge as looking to sustain Ukraine through these cold winters, look to rebuilding in a sustainable way. So valuable and so important to be looking towards the private sector. Technology is moving fast. Innovation is fast. Government typically is not fast. And so we need to look to build partnerships so that we can achieve what we need to get done.
On that last point, you know, one thinks about the U.S. government, one thinks about the Commerce Department engaging with industry and business. One doesn't necessarily in the first instance think about the State Department, but the State Department is doing a lot, making a lot of efforts here. Just say a few words about the U.S. government, the Biden administration's whole of government approach to engaging industry.
Well, that is a real, a constant challenge and opportunity for us, is to work together within government and the interagency to tap into the private sector. So things like the IRA, where we're really having to work quickly and quickly to reach that sustainability that we're trying to achieve. We can't implement alone. We have to work with the private sector. And so we do work with the Commerce Department. And my office is that office within the State Department that looks for opportunities, that looks to, within the State Department, but also looking outwards to see what are the resources within the State Department, how do we help match those with the private sector as the private sector works to advance U.S. interests and our shared goals.
So I know I work closely with the UAE government as well, and I know that they're following some similar tracks here and trying to bring a whole of government approach to what they're doing in engaging industry. Their Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working with their Ministry of Advanced Industry, with their Ministry of Economy, to try and do just what you're talking about. Ma'am, give us a few examples of why it's so important, again, to engage in conversations such as this one on GMIS and these international global forums.
Well, it's important to show up and to be present and to listen and to learn. And I come from a place where this administration is a humble administration in the sense that we know we cannot do it alone, right? The world's challenges are too big and too great. So as an example, critical minerals, in order to implement on the IRA Inflation Reduction Act goals around energy, we know that renewables will be a very important key component of making sure we are able to follow through on our climate goals around the IRA. And so critical minerals, looking to countries, producing countries, looking to the private sector, how are we making the matches, how are we helping facilitate to make sure that the supply chain is there. The work you're doing, the work in that regard is something neither one of us can do alone. We all have to, industry, government, private sector, philanthropy, all have to come together to help foster the ideas that are going to actually help us get it done.
I appreciate that very much. And I know Undersecretary Jose Fernandez is very keen on the critical minerals issue as well, which is something that's important for driving sustainability across all these verticals for the future. I think we're almost at the end of our time. I just wanted to give you maybe one last chance to say a word about your impressions of COP while you've been here, and where you think this might be 5 years from now when we're sitting down at COP28.
Well, I'm hopeful for the future. We have to be. And I think that's why the parties continue to arrive, to continue to work together, to continue to come together, because we know that the future, it depends on it. Literally, as our Special Envoy Kerry always says, there is no greater existential threat than climate to business, to individuals, to our planet. And so I'm hopeful that, did you say the next 5 years?
COP33. COP33.
Most of us think to COP30, but I mean to COP33, which is what year is 2028? Okay. Well, let's hope we're clearly on the road to the goals we've set for ourselves in 2030. I mean, that is where we all have to really come together to make sure that we're doing everything we can to sustain and to work together. I think focusing on growing in the individual capacity of technology to confront our climate challenges is really, where are we lifting up those entrepreneurs, those great new ideas of the future? That's where we all should be spending a lot of our time.
And ladies and gentlemen, the United States could not have a better partner in this than the United Arab Emirates, and the world could not have a better partner in this than the United Arab Emirates, because they're playing such a leadership role in these key areas, which is so critical. Special Representative McCullough, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you to GMIS. Thank you.
All right, if we could start our next panel, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to have a short panel on the topic of powering the future, innovations in renewable energy. This is quite an exciting topic, actually, when you think of what's going to be needed for the energy mix for the future. Renewable energy use is rapidly growing and becoming an increasingly important aspect of our total mix. According to the International Energy Agency, renewable energy sources provide 30% of the world's electricity in 2022. That's up from 27% in 2019. This growth is expected to continue, with renewable energy expected to provide an estimated 90% of the world's electricity by 2050. But it's not going to do it all. We all know that. Renewable energy will also have a substantial impact on manufacturing and industrialization. The United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, predicts that industrial energy consumption will experience an annual growth rate of 1.8 to 3.1% over the next 25 years. Notably, in developing nations and economies in transition, the industrial sector represents up to 50% of energy consumption, excluding transportation. This underscores the critical need for integrating renewable sources to address increasing energy demands while promoting sustainable development and reducing environmental impacts. We're going to have a panel today with Roger Martello, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of General Electric. Sorry, I have my papers here. Michael Train, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer of Emerson. Michael, welcome. Jill Evanko is the President, CEO, and Director of Chart Industries. And Lorena Della Giovanna is the Senior Vice President, Chief Sustainability Officer, and Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer of Hitachi. So we have a global panel to talk to us about this issue. I'm going to give each panelist about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes for a little opening on their company and their responsibilities, and then I'm going to throw some questions at all of you. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Danny, for all your leadership, your partnership, and your excellencies. Congratulations to you for clearly what is going to go down in history as one of the most impactful COPs, if not the most impactful COP in history. And your partnership with the private sector we're seeing here, I think, is a key decision that you made early on that's contributed here. So General Electric is a company that helps power 1/3 of the world's energy. We're an innovation company that innovates in the world of renewable energy, of conventional power, things like gas power and nuclear energy, grid technologies, both physical grid components and digital grid components, as well as the breakthrough technologies of small modular reactors, carbon capture, and hydrogen. So with a footprint of over about 1/3 of the world's energy coming from our innovation and technology, we take very seriously the rising to the challenge of both decarbonizing the energy sector, but also electrifying the planet at the same time so everyone has access to affordable, reliable, secure, safe, sustainable energy. So we focus on both of those priorities at the same time.
Great. My name is Mike Train. I'm with Emerson. Emerson is a global automation leader that serves really the wide span of essential industries out there. We provide all of the instrumentation, valves, control systems, and software to help all of those facilities maximize their opportunities. Obviously, they focus on efficiency. They focus on the quality of their products, and more recently, they're very focused on sustainability. And, you know, pleasure to be able to support them around the world in that endeavor.
Emerson's a company that isn't so well known. I mean, just give us a couple more words, 2 or 3 sentences on some of the key areas that you're in.
Yeah, so we're around life sciences, chemicals, power generation of all types, mining, the whole battery value chain. Now we're trying to stand up hydrogen ecosystems. We'll talk to that in a moment. So really, anywhere there's electrons or bubbles of molecules, we're pretty involved in it.
Thank you, Mike. Jill, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Ivanko, the CEO of Chart Industries, and I'll piggyback Mike. We do very similar design, engineering, manufacturing for a variety of molecules. We actually started as an oil and gas company, and what we realized was that the equipment that we use, whether it's brazed aluminum heat exchangers or tanks or trailers, actually we don't have to change our manufacturing approach to serve a variety of different end markets. So we refer to the end markets that we serve as the nexus of clean. Clean power, clean water, clean food, and clean industrials. And we service that from production, storage, and transport to end use all the way through to the aftermarket. And what we love about our business is that we are molecule agnostic. We believe that the energy transition is going to be a hybrid of solutions. And at the end of the day, that it requires all of the inputs that you're going to hear about from this panel.
Hi, I'm Lorena Della Giovanna from Hitachi. Hitachi is a Japanese company, a huge conglomerate operating in many different industries, from the energy to the healthcare, transportation, and so forth and so on. In terms of energy, we have technology to implement the adaptation of renewable energy, power generation, like actually we are in partnership with GE for the small nuclear reactor. We are doing innovation in other green technologies like hydrogen and CCUS. We can provide technology for clean transportation because we are operating for rolling stock and signaling, and we have technology to make the industries more efficient, more green across the whole value chain.
Excellent. Let's jump into a more specific discussion just on renewables. Roger, what are the latest renewable energy breakthroughs, and how do they compare with existing technologies? And perhaps say a word about onshore, offshore wind, solar, a few things like that, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And what I'm going to say here, I was so moved by the presentation on World Industrial Day, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't know that was part of the agenda, but I was fortunate to be here and see it. It causes me to rethink what I was going to say, because I want to tie it back to World Industrial Day. I feel very fortunate. I work for a company that actually makes things. Everybody has an important role to play here with their companies in the energy transition. I just feel really proud. I grew up in an industrial manufacturing neighborhood. My family came from that background, and I've always felt really passionate about making things and industrialization, employing people in manufacturing. We have 80,000 people working for us, many of whom are making things all around the world. And one of the things we make is renewable energy equipment, onshore wind turbines, offshore wind turbines. We have 54,000 wind turbines operating in the world. We have 7,500 hydropower installations. We have about 400 gigawatts that we're responsible for renewable energy all around the world. But it all comes back to the people who make it and the business that's supporting that. So I think the innovation here is actually less about what's the next most interesting technology. I love talking about innovation technology, small modular reactors, carbon capture, hydrogen, things like that. But when it comes to renewables, our innovation is we want to provide workhorse products that work for our customers. We don't want to necessarily be in a competition where we get bragging rights on the largest this or the most powerful that or the longest, which people tend to do in the renewable sector. Everybody's trying to one-up each other. We've tried to do that too, to be fair. We've been part of that. But I think we've learned what matters the most for renewables, what the most important innovation is that the technology works, and that it works for our customers, it works for a clean environment, it works for the employees, that we have a sustainable business for us and for our customers. So our focus on renewables at this point is on finding those workhorse products that work the best, that are reliable, that meet our customers' expectations, that meets the planet's expectations, and that keeps us running a sustainable business. And we're proud of the fact that we're seeing the results of that strategy, not so much competing for the next thing, but focusing on a core workhorse product technology. This has been our best innovation, because what's happened this year, we are seeing huge demand for onshore and offshore all around the world. We're being quite successful with our competitors and bidding for technologies based on this workhorse strategy. But most important to the point about World Industrial Day is we're building factories. We built a new factory recently in Schenectady, New York, where we're producing the first 6.1 megawatt onshore wind turbine in the United States, employing 200 more people. We're employing more people in our factories in Florida and North Dakota and all around the world because of this workhorse strategy. So the innovation is with the technology, more reliable onshore wind turbines, larger offshore wind turbines, and a strong strong solar component and all the elements that feed to it. But the innovation is also just in making sure for renewable energy we're having a sustainable business for our employees, for the folks in World Industrial Day, and for our customers.
Thank you, Roger. I'm going to jump around here a little bit. Lorena, tell us about notable innovations in renewables from the perspective of Hitachi.
Yeah, thank you so much. For us, first of all, we are not a renewable energy OEM. We don't manufacture wind turbine and we don't manufacture solar panel, but we think, and we have heard in these days, that there is the need of triple capacity of renewable energy. And that really calls to have a new energy system approach for what we call the power system of the future. And the way we are approaching this is basically with the three key technologies. One is the core of the network technology. Another one is the digital for grid, and then the digital solution. To be more specific, in terms of the core network technology, we are world leader for HVDC, high voltage direct current, and this is absolutely critical for the carbon neutral system because that enables to transport a large amount of energy in long distance with a very minimal loss in a very efficient way. That allows to integrate renewable energy as well as do grid interconnection. In terms of digital, the digital is absolutely important because we need stability. When we talk about renewable, there is a lot of fluctuation. And we have a cutting-edge system which help to manage the demand and from the generation to the power. And finally, in terms of digital solution, we can help the companies to measure the green usage, the green energy usage, in order to be able then to take action on investment as well as on the disclosure.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to come to you a minute on the digital and some of the solutions in that regard. But first, just let me ask Joel to chime in on the same question on the topic of integration, and maybe from the perspective of hydrogen.
Sure. So what I would start with is, if you look back, first of all, we've been doing hydrogen for 150 years, and nobody really cared for 147 of those. So yeah, 3 years ago, I think that
3 years ago your phone rang and you was like, wow.
Hey, this is great. But no, I think the message on the innovation side is actually that the mentality toward it has been innovative in the last few years and kind of gone from an unrealistic set of everybody's going to rip out all the existing infrastructure and replace it with green hydrogen, but rather now we're at a point where we're actually being pragmatic about the approach to that particular application. In terms of technologies, we're finally starting to get out of that demonstration scale and now into a little bit more commercialization and larger scale. So what was a 15-ton per day liquefier is now, we're having conversations about 300-ton per day liquefiers. And I think that is really crucial to the continued innovation. And my last comment would be really around the manufacturing side of the house, which is as important in my mind toward making some of these more embryonic end markets succeed, is to be efficient in our manufacturing operations and the innovations around that, which really goes to automation and some of the things you'll hear from Lorena and Mike as well. So ultimately, starting to see those things work together to scale.
Thank you. So Mike, it is about building efficiencies so much. So talk to us about what Emerson's doing with regard to automation here in these areas, particularly with regard to places where you excel, such as wind turbine management and renewable fuels automation.
Yeah, I think, first of all, we need to really celebrate the world's progress in the renewable space. We keep exceeding the forecasts of the IEA as they put their 5-year forecasts out. Our collective manufacturing, society has managed to put those in place at a pace that I think exceeded all expectations, and we should celebrate the progress around some of those activities. We're involved, obviously, in the automation, the controls, and the reliability of all these installations, wind, solar. We use our technology to help our customers get those on and off of the grid, synchronization kind of based on our power generation background. Hydroelectric, I love that Roger mentions that. I still think that's something that's not getting enough airplay right now as an opportunity to be able to bring another solution to the space that's going to be helpful for balancing the grid and making sure that we've got power at all hours, if you will. And of course, everything in consideration for nuclear, whether that's extending the life of existing facilities or coming out with some of the small formats that are being designed right now. So automation is important. I think releasing a lot of information that's kind of trapped in our systems, getting those pushed to the different jobs and the companies that are running those facilities, so they get access, they get that insight, they can drive efficiency, they can make progress. Really key, you know, we start thinking about some of the modeling, the simulation, being able to kind of plan these new facilities or next facilities with all of the experience that we've had, you know, bringing those forward as we get to the world's largest X and then the next world's largest X as we go through some of these programs is pretty exciting.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities. Jill, you know, how can renewable energy be integrated into existing systems, and what are some of the challenges that you think we face in that process?
Well, first I would say I think that the right application for the right molecule is a really important distinction. We run across, in a molecule agnostic environment, a lot of people that are really honed in on one particular renewable. And that's something that is, I think, a detriment. The challenge is that we have to think about this as a multitude of answers toward energy. It's the mix, right? And so, you know, in a position like we sit, we should be able to say, hey, yes, that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, and here's a better alternative. But you can see renewables integrated not only in the grid, and I think there's some other folks up here that are better suited to talk about that particular potential integration, but also into end use in the right applications. So things that I see as opportunities are, where can we leverage, let's take an operator, a heavy-duty commercial Class 8 truck, and those operators, those drivers are looking for the same exact experience that they have with diesel. So that's something that is fairly achievable in the near term, to be able to accomplish that with the same payloads, the same type of pumping experience, and time lapse to do that. So I see some early wins in those opportunities to integrate, and then there's some much broader challenges that are going to take a lot longer to be able to do that.
So Lorena, I'm going to come back to you from the challenges in a second, but first, since Jill mentioned the grid, I'm going to ask Mike to just give us a couple sentences about the grid and electrification.
Yeah, I would say some of the big challenges with having a high capacity of renewables mixed into the grid is obviously the variability that those present, because they're constantly shifting in what they're presenting to the grid, and we have to have other ways to meet the moment of the demand. So we are starting to see some of the storage solutions come along to help maybe fill in some of those activities. Obviously, we have gas-fired power that still plays a very major role in making sure that we can fill in some of those things. But that we're now seeing the battery systems come along that, you know, utility size, 400 megawatt type of installations. They're generally very distributed. You've got to have remote management capabilities to be able to kind of see what's going on, manage those things.
I was on a panel at ENIC this morning, and all we talked about were small modular reactors and how we're going to have a little nuclear reactor at everybody's manufacturing plant in the future.
I think someday, yes, we will get there. But they'll be very distributed, and obviously, you know, the signaling of managing all that's going to be a big deal. So I think, you know, right now the grid is stressed in places that the software to help understand what's going on, anticipate, manage those things is a very big deal.
Lorena, Hitachi's a global company. It's an Asian company. This is you bring to the table an interesting and different perspective, perhaps, than some of the rest. Please.
Yeah, well, first of all, there is absolutely the need to upgrade the current infrastructure and to invest in new grid. Because there is a report of IEA saying that in this moment there are around 3,000 gigawatt of renewable energy projects in queue waiting to be connected to the grid globally. So if we don't do an investment, and it's requested to have a double investment in the grid in the short term, we will not be able to have enough renewables. So this is the first challenge, and this is something we need to tackle. The second one, you talk about storage. The battery storage is absolutely important, because when we talk about renewable, there is a lot of fluctuation. And we need to have this system in order to store extra energy, to be able to use it when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. And also that will help to make the system more resilient in case the demand will change. And then I would say that we need a much more innovative business model. We should have a kind of long-term framework in partnership where they can give the possibility to the companies to properly plan in terms of capacity, in terms of skill, in terms of supply chain, in terms of investment, because the capex required for the investment in grid is much, much higher than the current one. And one day in our electrical bill, we will see a low cost of energy, but a high cost of grid infrastructure because of the investment.
Distribution.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. All right, Roger, bring it all around to GE plays a role in all of this, has their fingers in all of it. So give us some perspective from your standpoint, please.
Well, I think this conversation on renewables and grid has to go together. We can't talk about renewables anymore without talking about grid, without talking about digital in the same sentence. So we didn't plan it this way, I don't think, but I think we would all agree on that. Every dollar you spend on renewables, you have to be spending on grid. And I've not that, like everyone else, I've been spending a lot of time in rooms here at COP28, and one thing I noticed is everything can be debated. Different technologies, different policies, what you spend on here and there. The one thing that no one is debating anywhere, this may be the only issue beyond debate at COP28, is the importance of the grid. Because we may be able to succeed without this or that, but we cannot succeed without the grid working and making sure everything we're doing is bringing the grid along with it. So when we think about renewables, have to be thinking about the grid. We talked a lot about some of the various technologies. I think Ukraine, as Dorothy mentioned earlier, has been an unfortunate wake-up call, not only for Ukraine, which is tragic, and we're working to support in partnership with the State Department, but for the rest of the world about just how vulnerable we are right now. And I think it's obvious to say there could be a weather event, there could be an attack on the grid, there could be cybersecurity. The thing that we know, which is more concerning to me, or just as concerning, is we don't have a strategic supply of grid equipment. This is an area where demand is greatly outstripping supply, and if you wanted to buy something from us today, I imagine for everybody up here, it'd be 2 to 3 years before we could even entertain that. That's just not something that we should feel good about, and it's something where we can work in partnership together with the public sector to say, how do we build strategic supply chains, just like on renewables? How do we up World Industrial Day, coming back to that, how does World Industrial Day help us ramp up the manufacturing of grid equipment, which again, I think is the one topic everybody at COP would probably agree on.
Thanks. You mentioned some of the political implications. You mentioned some of the black swans, if you will, that are out there maybe with regard to climate crises. Lorena, from your perspective, what are some of these political implications and economic implications of the renewable energy-based economy? And how can we all work towards equitability around between the global south, between the north, between all of us on the globe?
Yeah, well, first of all, I can see a geographical implication because of the mismatch for where you produce energy and where you consume energy. There are some countries where you might have a lot of availability of renewable energy, but you have a low intensity of population or low activity, industrial activities, or vice versa. You might have a high intensity of population, a high intensity of industrial activities, but you don't have enough renewable energy. So again, transmission and distribution are very important, but we need to be careful that we are not going to increase complexity and cost. I can see a geopolitical implication because of the change of control of the energy source, and that might create a conflict. And I think we should make sure that there is enough fairness also in terms of how we distribute the benefit and the burden. Might happen that some community might get the benefit to have renewable energy, but actually the cost and the risk is in another country. So in order to overcome this, the collaboration within the countries is absolutely important, including the transfer of technology or financing, because, as I said, otherwise this disparity will increase more and more.
So I want to let other panelists have a chance to comment on this topic because I think it's incredibly important. The UAE has made a Herculean effort at this COP to push, to promote a conversation that brings voices in and peoples in that might otherwise be left out in the Global South and other places. The new fund that was just created, all of these things are so critically important. Anyone else want to say anything about the political implications of all of this? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to give you the chance to say something. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Quickly on the supply chain pieces, you know, with these different technologies now being put out there, if you trace all of the supply chain all the way back, there's now different countries where these things are being, you know, very few countries where some of these materials are being sourced from, the critical minerals and that type of thing. So keeping our eyeballs on that, making sure we got the right collaborations and the right skills kind of view of the world. I think I'm an automation person, but you know, the people skill and the talent and the ability to create and install all of this capacity that we're all dreaming about is massive, and we gotta stay focused on the educational aspects and deploying this broadly, very, very distributed around the world in terms of what we got to do.
Jill, how do we drive some of these renewable solutions to those less able to maybe buy a new solar plant or whatever it is right off the top? I mean, your company does some of this, so give us some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective is how do we think about our top priorities as a U.S. publicly traded company where we have stakeholders and shareholders that expect us to also be capitalists and make money. And so we think about it in a way that says the right application for the right answer, as well as how do we leverage our global workforce, to Mike's point, in 64 manufacturing locations around the world. We can make every one of our products in more than one location, so getting closer to those end users and being able to provide a multitude of solutions. And in a lot of cases, what we see is a stair step depending on the region and the evolution of where they are in that transition, or even in that starting point. You know, I think as an American, I'm certainly very me-centric in the sense of I get clean water and clean power, right? I'm able to have access to that, but as soon as living in Texas, my air conditioner goes out, I don't really care how it gets
or your
back
heat
on.
in the wintertime.
Exactly. And so, you know, I think we have to have a much more pragmatic approach to that. And inside of the Chart business, we bring forward those ideas, and then we talk to the customers about where they are in that. And there's not one answer for everybody. And so being able to have a solution or a piece or a part that addresses where that region, that company, or that industry is super critical to the success in the coming decades.
I'm going to give Roger a question on the social and the environmental impacts of renewable energy, but to get the rest of you thinking, the question I've asked on every panel this week is, we're at COP28 5 years from now. It's not 10 years from now, it's 5 years from now. What are one or two of the key issues that you think are going to be on the table 5 years from now at COP28? But first, Roger, just a couple of sentences on the environmental impacts of renewable energy and how GE works to best mitigate those.
Sure. I think on environmental impacts, we can think of two things. We can think of the actual turbines and the renewable energy and the components, the rare earth minerals, the critical minerals, materials that go into that. And we all have a duty. I know I speak for everyone here. We all have a duty at this point. It's not just about producing the clean energy. It's about the process and the supply chain and the full stewardship and circularity around the renewable energy. It would be entirely wrong to say we're going to produce clean energy, but then we're not factoring it in. So we always think of the principles of circularity, of reuse, recycle, and we start with rethink, because we have to, and we're not where we need to be. Let me be clear, I'm not here to do a victory lap. We are absolutely not where we need to be. We're making progress. If you walk around the blue zone, you'll see one of our recyclable blades right in the blue zone. But we have to rethink how we do this so that circularity and stewardship are woven into our products from day one before we even start to produce anything. That's number one. Number two is the site considerations. And what we've learned there is we have to engage the communities as early as possible. We're going to be more successful the sooner we engage the communities, the sooner we partner with them, the sooner we listen to them, understand them, and that leads to cooperation and collaboration and expedition going forward.
Very important. Some of the C's, cooperation and collaboration. Okay, Mike, we are at COP33, 5 years from now. What's one or two issues on the table that either positive thing, negative thing that you think is going to be important, that is going to be under discussion?
I'll start with the positive because we need optimism as fuel to keep going, right? We're in a marathon. We've had 3 years of getting excited. We're in this for the long haul, and our organizations and our people and our communities have to be in this for the long haul too. So start with the positives. I think we're going to have the world's largest X, Y, Z, D, whatever versions of these new technologies we're talking about. We need to be amplifying those. The general public needs to know that they're out there, they're happening. We need something to,
So like in the
have some takeaways, right?
Like in the nuclear discussion this morning, you're saying we're going to have implementation in 5 years of a lot of these things.
Yeah, of course, and at scale examples.
Scale.
So we can point to and say that this will work. It fits in the roadmap. Now go, broadly send that out there. And I think hydrogen's going to be right in that conversation 5 years from now, right? Those initial major elements of the hydrogen ecosystem will be out there. I think we're still going to be very challenged around the efficiency of our installed base operations, which is massive, of course, across all of manufacturing. And we just got to be deliberate about beating on energy efficiency, reduce. Obviously, emissions management, and then, of course, to the extent we can change to renewable energy sources, we've got to go for that as hard as we can.
Okay, Jill.
All right, I'm hoping that we see all of the MOUs that have been announced the last 3 years turn into real projects.
So implementation.
And I'm also looking forward to the opportunity to see some more digital at work or not, right? Like we're kind of in this digital wasteland of everybody is doing it, but how does it actually work in the grand scheme of things? And then lastly, and I think perhaps most importantly, is a global set of certifications and safety standards for some of these newer markets.
And hydrogen is going to be where in 5 years?
Hydrogen is going to be further along than where we are, but in my opinion, not as far along as some of the predictions as a % of the total energy pie.
I hope you're talking to my friends here in the UAE because they're pushing really hard and really fast on that. Go ahead,
That's
Lorraine.
great to hear.
Thank you. So I totally agree with what they just said, and Hitachi is a member of the CEO Climate Leader Alliance of the World Economic Forum. We signed a letter for COP to the world leaders for a number of actions, so my expectation is that those actions are implemented.
And you think are there any new issues on the agenda at COP33 that in your crystal ball that you think we're going to be very worried about, given your perspective?
No, I want to be positive.
Okay.
I really want to be positive.
Okay. That's fair, and that's wonderful.
No, because as my colleagues, we are a global company. We have a lot of responsibilities across the community, on our employees, in our operation, for our customers. We wanted to accelerate. We have responsibility for the next generation. I want to be positive.
And so you are optimistic from Hitachi that we're going to make progress.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And more the business community will get together and sharing and collaborating together, and more we will get there.
Excellent. Outstanding. Okay, Mr. Martello from GE, you get the last word here.
I'll go back to where I started. I think history in 5 years will look back on COP28 and say this was a game-changing moment. Just like the Paris Agreement ignited the public sector, the UAE has ignited the private sector. And what we're going to see going forward is an era of action where the private sector, in partnership with the public sector, as Dorothy mentioned, is going to really step up and deliver on the innovation and technology. It seems like the public sector and private sector have never been more aligned in the history of any of our careers. And this is a turning point. And while we can make predictions about specific technologies, people will look back on COP20 and say that was the moment everything changed and we went from talking to action, and we'll see the results in those 5 years.
Roger, I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's exactly my sentiment after spending the last 5 days out here at COP, 5 or 6 more to go. Let's see some of the more announcements that come out. I want to give a round of applause to our panel, but also a round of applause to the UAE for hosting COP28. Okay. Another one down. I think they want to take a group picture of us all here together.
How do I switch this on? Thank you, Danny. Thank you to all the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now introduce Matti Yetta, who will be moderating the next panel. Matti is the Chief Sustainability Officer for CGI. Matti, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. His Excellency, it is an honor to be here today. The session today and right now is about advancing the climate agenda, the role of the fifth industrial revolution in transforming industries. Unfortunately, His Excellency Dr. Sidi is unable to join us here today, but it is truly an honor to welcome Fatima El Sheikh, the strategic advisor of the Arabic Bank for Economic Development, to give us a keynote. Fatima, the stage is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Matti. It's a great honor and privilege. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, it is my great honor to address you today at this pivot event of Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit during the COP28, coinciding with the inaugural celebration of the World Industrial Day. This gathering underscores our collective dedication to steering the course of manufacturing towards future defined by sustainability and innovation, a hallmark of the fifth industrial revolution. At the outset, I would like to extend a heartfelt congratulations to the United Arab Emirates for their exemplary leadership and organization of the COP28. This event is a great testimony and success for their commitment towards sustainable development, not only in UAE, but also across the world. Their efforts have not only brought us together today, but also have paved the way for groundbreaking initiatives, like the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative, complementing the UAE Africa Green Investment Initiative. These endeavors are vital for our shared vision of greener and more prosperous future. As we delve into the transformative potential of the fifth industrial revolution, which we will talk about in the next session, it is critical to recognize the role of multilateral development finance, particularly institutions like BADIA, the Arab Bank for Economic Development of Africa, in their transformative journey. This revolution is marked by a significant shift where human creativity synergizes with technology's progress. It is a movement beyond mere innovation. It is about prosperous, intentional innovation aimed at fostering sustainability and inclusivity. We are at a junction where technologies such as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and the biotechnologies are converging to reshape industries, making them more sustainable and efficient. In this rapidly evolving landscape, the role of multilateral development finance institutions is increasingly critical. As industries undergo transformation, it is imperative that emerging economies are not sidelined. BADIA, through strategic partnership and investment, is committed to ensuring these technologies are accessible and beneficial to all, particularly in Africa. Our focus remains to be steadfast on financing projects that leverages these technologies for sustainable development, while we are also fostering inclusive growth opportunities. The Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa was founded by 18 Arab countries 50 years almost ago, and it still stands in front of this transformation. Aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union Agenda 2063, our strategy concentrates on key areas such as infrastructure, agriculture value chain, micro and small enterprises, and trade. These areas are vital for propelling sustainable development in Africa and across the universe, positioning the continent as a significant global player and a regional integration between the Arab states and Africa. the responsibility of development institution in steering low-carbon manufacturing is more pronounced as we gather here today. As we transition to a low-carbon economies and in a collaborative approach that is essential among companies and government and investors, but also across the population and citizens. We cannot talk about green technologies without putting the human at the center of these technologies. They are not only the innovators, they are also the utilizers of this technology. Tackling the challenges and demands of in a multifaceted approach, like what UAE has undertaken on its shoulder for promoting industrialization in a sustainable approach, where we are trying to ensure equitable employment and preparing a workforce for the future generation and the future of sustainability, is of a critical importance to the future of the sustainable development and to the climate change actions. Responsible decarbonization is another key area of achieving net zero, entitles phasing out fossil fuels responsibly, ensuring that there is no actual emission reduction without significantly introducing alternative technologies and energy source such as solar and wind. The ambition is good and great, but it's actually quite big. And increased financing and funding through international cooperation is highly required. Yesterday in this same room, the Arab Coordination Group announced a 50 billion pledge to support sustainable development in Africa, 10 of which is dedicated for renewable energy in the continent. As we navigate these challenges, collaboration emerges one of our most valuable assets, partnership between governments, and we thank again the government of UAE. The private sector and international organization is crucial. I seize this opportunity to express my gratitude to UNIDO for their enduring partnership with Badia over the past 5 decades in promoting development, economic growth, and industrialization in sub-Saharan Africa. A special note of thanks goes to UNIDO ITPO office, especially the one in Bahrain, for helping us with technologies and bridging the technologies towards Africa. In conclusion, as we mark the launch of the World Industrial Day, let's remember that sustainable industrialization is a shared responsibility. Development finance institutions like Badia are ready to play a central role in this journey, embracing innovation and partnership to build sustainable, prosperous future in Africa and beyond. Together, we can harness the power of the 5th Industrial Revolution and transform the industries, but also make sure that the earth, which what we say in Africa, we are borrowing the earth from the future generation, we're not inheriting it from our ancestors. So let's hope that what we are borrowing is a sustainable borrowing and a sustainable finance. I thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Thank you for a wonderful keynote, Fatima. And now it gives me an honor to welcome the panelists. If I could invite Alessandro Bresciane, Senior Vice President, Climate Technology Solutions at Baker Hughes. James Doris, Chief Executive Officer at Otis Aviation. Omar Al-Mahmoud, Chief Executive Officer of ICT Fund, UAE. And Dr. Estelle, who is the Scientific Director at the University of Applied Sciences. Welcome, panelists. Could we just give them a round of applause, please? So the challenges posed by hard-to-abate sectors have become increasingly apparent as we strive for a sustainable future. Industries such as heavy manufacturing, aviation, shipping face significant hurdles due to the high carbon emissions and resource-intensive operations. However, the emergence of the 5th Industrial Revolution, also known as Industry 5.0, holds promise in driving transformative change within these sectors. At the heart of the 5th Industrial Revolution lies the integration of green technologies and sustainability practices. This revolutionary paradigm seeks to optimize operations, reduce environmental impact, and steer hard-to-abate sectors towards a more sustainable pathway. So Dr. Estelle, I will start with you for the first question, which is about sustainability and inclusivity within industrialization. What does this mean to you?
Question. This microphone, now it's working, so thank you for this very important question. So if we are talking about a sustainable and inclusive, this means that this industrialization has to be to the benefit of all people, and at the same time be climate neutral and do no harm on nature. And if we now have a look what does benefiting to all really means, then we have to take into consideration that we have 4.5 billion people around the world who are in development, which they need economic growth. In addition to that, we will have 2 billion more people in 2050. And among the people living today, we have 600 million people without any access to energy, meaning they are light years away from any industrialization. So this is somehow the starting point that we have to take into consideration if we really want to move forward towards an inclusive industrialization. And this, of course, taking into consideration that we will have to see a huge increase in GDP, in particular in the developing world. And the model that we have developed for a climate neutral reference solution considers that we will have to see a GDP growth by 4 times by 2050 in the developing world. And this, of course, means that there will be a massive increase in primary energy demand as well, and there we are counting 30 to 40% by 2050. And against this background, of course, all the pledges that we have heard during the COP until now to triple renewable energies by 2030, to double efficiency, of course, this is the right way to go. But I think this is far, far away from being enough. And at the end, what we need for an inclusive industrialization is more technological approaches. And I think that we can be more than happy if we really combine all these technologies available in a very, very smart way, that then we will be able to make it.
Thank you. I really love the notion of inclusivity and GDP, and actually I think we have a way to go in using GDP itself as a measure of inclusivity. If you don't mind me following up on you've been here at COP, and you've seen and heard quite a few conversations around what we need to do to reduce the emissions. Do you think that the topic of inclusivity is live? Have you heard much about the topic?
So to be honest, I think it's underestimated. I think because a lot of people do not really have a sense of figures, yeah, and are we talking about millions or billions or trillions? I think they do not really care, yeah, but I think there are huge, huge differences, and at the end, if we are talking about emissions, if we are talking about the required financing, I think we are talking huge, huge numbers, and then we talk about how are we going to share all this, yeah, to really make it inclusive. So I think it's the people do not really have in mind what it means. I think it is there, but how to make this work? This is a totally different question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Doctor. The next question, James, is for you. How can we reduce carbon emissions in hard-to-abate sectors using innovation?
Thank you very much. So my name is James. I'm the CEO of a startup. We're California-based. We're called Otis Aviation. We're building very long-distance hybrid electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And really the goal of that company is to both decarbonize and make regional transportation much more efficient. And these are routes like Abu Dhabi to Riyadh. We flew that recently. That was 1 hour and 5 minutes, wheels up to wheels down, but 5 hours and 20 minutes door to door. Wow. So this challenge of time and efficiency and carbon output exists everywhere. It's not unique to this region. So that's really what we focus on. My background, I was during my doctoral work at MIT working in fusion energy research. Later, I went into the electrification of ground transportation, was there in the early 2000s as we were building the first plug-in hybrid electric and fully battery electric vehicles. I was employee 20 at what was Virgin Hyperloop and developed the propulsion and levitation systems and built the teams and technology there, and now working in aviation. So to the question of how do we address the hard-to-abate sectors, well, I think a lot of this can only be done with the development of new technologies. And I think everyone has to keep in mind, what does it actually mean? What is the mental model to develop new technology and commercialize it? And so we should really think of a three-phase process of starting with technology development. Can I make a certain technology work? Technology commercialization. Can I make it work economically in a product that the market will actually adopt? And then finally, in the scaling and full market adoption. And I think a good framework to think about the scope and the scale and the time it takes to have an impact, we can look at the electrification of cars, since we're all very familiar with those products. Electrification of cars really started in the 90s and accelerated in the 2000s, so we're talking a 30-year time span. There were about a dozen electric vehicle companies that raised in private capital about $15 to $25 billion collectively. And then in addition to that, all of the incumbents followed suit, and their internal investments is probably about 10x the 15 to 20 billion that the startups raised. So we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in 30 years, and the core technology that needed to be developed there was better batteries, slightly better electric motors, and more power-dense power electronics. Now project that onto how do we decarbonize aviation. It's a bigger challenge, right? We should expect this is going to take time. We should expect there is a lot of capital that needs to be put to work, and it needs to be put to work in ways that are risk-taking, both in the capital deployment as well as in the technology development.
Thank you very much. And I'm a huge fan of what your organization is doing and the direction that you're sort of taking the organization. But we'll come back to your organization in a few minutes. Alessandro, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and I'll follow up with a question.
Sure. Alessandro Bresciani, I'm leading climate technology solution for Baker Hughes. Baker Hughes is an energy technology company that is active for a century plus, more than a century in the overall world for the energy sectors. And so I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So your question, Alessandro, is what are the challenges and solutions for integrating renewable energy sources in carbon-intensive industries?
Definitely very high. Obviously, we've been hearing the panel before with the competent people really on that sector. Renewable is going to be definitely one component that is going to solve the issue of the decarbonization. Oil is not going to be the only one. There's going to be limited there in terms of applicability of that solution in hard-to-abate sector. But definitely there's a huge opportunity there to integrate that technology with other technologies that are going to solve the limitation that renewable can have. And it's just a matter really to get the different technology talking to each other. A portion of the sustainability is coming really also on the technology side, in which way you're going to integrate different technology in order to have a sustainable solution. Sustainable solution is not only from an economical standpoint, is starting from the economical standpoint, but also in the applicability standpoint, how that is going to come to play. I mean, there's multiple examples actually in the world, and you got renewable that can work only in certain period of the day. How you integrate that with additional technology, that is going to be fundamentally important, because the hard-to-abate industry, generally they have processes that are 24/7 kind of processes that require power for that kind of solution. So everything that is happening in different technology, we are talking about storage, we are talking about hydrogen, we are talking about even utilization of gas in the carbonized way. That is going to help to create the solution and get that kind of solutions, overall solution in a sustainable way.
Do you think we're moving fast enough on the renewable energies front?
It's a huge question, actually. There's no just one answer, honestly. It depends. It depends where we are. Obviously, there's come to play different factors there. Technology on the renewable is there. How you integrate, the ability to integrate with the grid is there also. Requires some acceleration maybe on legislation in order to be able to apply and having really the PPA available and being able to deploy in a faster way. Then you see that in certain countries, obviously you see in the world, across the world, you see that there's a significant installation in certain countries. Not necessarily those are the countries that are the faster one. They just start earlier. Here in the Emirates, you see a huge acceleration around renewable and around new technologies, and you're going to see even more coming in the near future.
Thank you. Omar, do you mind just introducing yourself and your organization, please?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Omar Al Mahmoud. I'm the CEO of the ICT Fund, which is a fund launched by the UAE's Telecommunication and Digital Government Authority with the purpose of developing the ICT sector in the UAE. So we do that by having a legislation that imposes revenue fees on any licensed telecom operator. We invest back into society through, you can say, investments in education, research and development, incubation and entrepreneurship, in addition to national technology initiatives and drives. So that's our organization has been pivotal in transforming the UAE ICT sector and digital transformation sector, as well as investing in education and research and technology, also related to the fifth industrial revolution, if you wish, all the way up to space programs and missions.
It's really exciting to hear about the model, and we have heard about finance really being needed to drive decarbonization of our industries. So Omar, how can we overcome barriers to decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So being a funding agency, we are privy to many different initiatives and case studies across the globe. So one striking one which stood out was one related to the steel industry, which is a hard-to-abate sector. This story or this case study was based out of Sweden, and there was a program called Hybrid, which is hydrogen breakthrough iron ore technology, which was a solution to a challenge, which is to how do you address, you can say, the carbon emissions coming in from the steel industry. So a three-way collaboration was set up. One is with SSAB, one of the leading Swedish steel industry manufacturers, LCAB, which is an iron ore producer, as well as one of the leading energy producers as well in Sweden. So what they came up with the solution is to how do we reduce our carbon emissions as well as change maybe the way we produce steel. The idea was to replace coal, which is used in part to, of course, to acquire the high temperatures in the steel industry. So they replaced coal with green hydrogen. The idea is to replace that and use electricity instead of, you can say, coal manufacturing or using coal and iron ore to create the steel. So what they came up with was a new approach to the steel industry. And what happened was they have, of course, reduced their emissions significantly, which attracted the European Union's Innovation Fund. The Innovation Fund is funded by the European Union's emissions trading system. And based on that, they've successfully achieved a new approach in innovation, which is to apply it into the steel industry, with legacy industry. They've removed coal from the equation, as well as attracted, of course, funding from the European Union, and as well as they have reduced their carbon emissions significantly, with the goal of helping Sweden achieve its 2045 fossil-free goal. And based on that, their plan is by 2030, they would have reduced 14 million tons of carbon dioxide. So that is a case study which we see is in how do you go about and reduce carbon emissions in hard-to-abate sectors such as the steel industry.
Wow, Wow. I think that is a really good example of actually, I think what stood out for me there was collaboration and the different stakeholders that were needed to actually work together. On that front then, Omar, from your experience, is it easy to get different actors to pull together in the same direction?
Sure. So we are within an example of how people can come together and collaborate. But my theory is having people agree on set topics. Maybe what would usher in the change would be technology and not the actual will of the people. Will of peoples may differ between different opinions or different interests, if you wish. But the technology rate which we see, the exponential rate of technology being developed, is actually ushering this prior to actually people arriving at conclusions or agreements. So if you want to you can say if there's a will, there's a way. But sometimes there isn't a technology way to save money.
Great. James, let's come back to you in terms of the sort of economic benefits of transitioning to sustainable practices and what your thoughts are there. But also maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more from the aviation perspective, what perhaps you might think those benefits are.
Sure. I mean, I think we can all acknowledge that in the hard debate sectors, there's incredible amounts of economic activity that's driven from these sectors. We know we need to make some big changes in the way we do business in these sectors. And the companies that are able to affect that change quickest and most economically and win in the marketplace are going to become gigantic behemoth companies of the next decade or 2 decades. So I think it is nearly impossible to understate the economic opportunity and economic impact. Now, figuring out how to make that economic impact just and shared, I think is a whole other challenge. And for that, I would defer to some other folks on our panel. Yeah. Specifically within aviation, we're still very much at the technology development stage. We have a number of technologies in process. There's a lot of startups working this space, and some of the incumbents are starting to make moves there. So what we're seeing is fully electric aircraft being developed. To make that really viable, the battery technology needs to be expanded dramatically, not just in what we did from the 1990s to today in the advent of lithium-ion batteries, but 1 generation, 2 generations beyond that to really make fully electric aircraft a viable reality. In the meantime, we can decarbonize a lot with hybrid electric aircraft, and that's what Otis Aviation is focused on. So, for instance, our aircraft on a regional network, and we're talking routes up to 1,200 kilometers in range, our aircraft can decarbonize on a network average by about 76%. It's not zero, but we're extremely excited to be able to have that type of reductions in such a hard-to-abate sector. And I think as we start looking to international travel, long-haul travel, that is an entirely different challenge, scope of challenge. We're seeing a lot of work going into sustainable aviation fuel. It's not enough. We need funds investing more money in those companies, please. It's going to take an extremely long amount of time. Technology needs to be developed. In the sustainable aviation fuel scope, we're seeing new technologies, but it's about feedstock availability, it's about economics, it's about getting to the right economics in sustainable aviation fuel at the scale. And we are nowhere close. I think in 2021, we produced about 0.1% in total sustainable aviation fuel as what the aviation industry needs. Right? We have a long, long way to go. And then, of course, there's a number of folks looking at making aircraft powered with hydrogen systems. I'm personally a little less optimistic that that's going to prove to be a winning strategy, but I have a lot of friends and brothers and sisters in the space working in this, and I deeply hope that they prove me wrong.
Wow, that's just fascinating to learn. And we were just talking about a just sort of transition a few minutes ago, Dr. Estelle. Let's maybe touch on the same question in terms of the benefits of transitioning, but also how we do that in a way that is, I suppose, inclusive of everyone.
So this is now two different questions, and before answering to those, I would like to give one more interesting figure. When we were just discussing, are we fast enough to scale up renewables? So if you have a look, where do we stand today? I think only 6% of today's primary energy supply is based on new renewables. So meaning multiplying by 3 means 18%. And this is how far we are away from really a fast scale up. So this is really to give to get the full picture. Now, what does that mean? This means at the end, and I'm coming back to what I've said early on, that we need many more technological approaches and a smart combination of all of them. And of course, now going back to electricity and renewable energy, so from my perspective, and I think I have not said that yet, so coming from Germany, from a country that really is facing a lot of challenges doing this Energiewende in Germany. So this is not that easy, and it's not that easy because we are running on a very narrow technological path. So meaning, what we are finding out now that electricity becomes very, very expensive if we try to have an electricity system that is based on renewables only. And so our reference solution, I think what we are saying, we absolutely should combine a reliable and controllable energy source. And what is this reliable and controllable energy source? It can either be fossil or nuclear. This is why another pledge, we have to work on nuclear makes absolutely sense, and it's one of these solution elements that we need. Okay, so electricity from two different sources being based on two pillars, not on just only one. Then we have the industry sector, and of course we will also need a CCUS in the industry sector. And from my perspective, at the end, we even need to widen this discussion and have to have a look at the energy sector itself, because the energy sector itself is responsible for 40% of global emissions. And this leads to the discussions that has been held at the Petersberger Climate Dialogue in Germany. Is the decarbonization, is it about getting out of fossil fuels, or is it getting out of fossil emissions? And I think it makes a lot of sense thinking more about how do we avoid the fossil emissions while staying with the fossil fuels. That would widen up the ways of options and ways to go massively. Then another element that we need is that we will need our climate neutral fuels and energy carriers. And this is way more than just green hydrogen. Green hydrogen brings us a molecule that we can work with and transport and so on, but there are way more options in this field as well. And finally, I think this is all technology, this is all industry and so on, but we should not forget nature as a very, very important carbon sink to really come to net zero. Now just 2 sentences to the economic benefits. Now we are talking about inclusive industrializations, meaning that we have to have a look at economy and society as a whole, and are there economic benefits for the whole society? And this is a very, very complicated question. And again, so from my background now coming from Germany, what we are seeing is that many products are getting more expensive. So the same product as before is now more expensive. It's electricity, it's steel, it's everything because of the transformation. And what does it mean if the same product as before is more expensive? It means it's a decrease in wealth, it's a loss in wealth. At the same time, there may be companies that profit a lot. This is why we have a very confusing debate. Some are saying this is great what we are doing, we are profiting a lot, and also energy companies, but society as a whole, the German GDP is actually decreasing. I think this is another story. And I could elaborate more on that, but I think this is the point that we also have to talk about and not forget. It's not just the profit of a single company. We also have to have a look at the whole society and at the economy as a whole.
I have some personal thoughts about GDP and its measure in the context of sustainability, but I think that's a whole debate on its own. Alessandro, if I may ask a question around how can advanced technologies drive sustainability in hard-to-abate sectors? Any thoughts there?
I mean, several, okay? We can have a thought, each one for each single technology that eventually can come to play, obviously. There's not going to be, for the hard-to-abate, obviously, there's not going to be one technology that is going to be predominant. Even in a specific sector, you're going to have probably multiple solutions that are going to come to play. And we can do those kind of assessment today, knowing that technology available for hard-to-abate kind of reduction of emission there's only probably 30-35% available on what is going to be needed. There's probably another 30%, 25-30% that is under development as we speak, and that is going to be something to come later, because today are just really at the laboratory level. Technology is going to be definitely the way to resolve, from a technical standpoint, the problem of emissions. There's not going to be, it's going to be a spectrum of those, can be different kind of fuel, can be a renewable kind of application in certain areas. We are going to have hydrocarbons come into play. The molecular is not going to be the issue. The way you're going to use the molecular is going to be the issue. So that has to come with the solution. Definitely, there's a pretty strong correlation. Then they've been my colleague here, they've been touching base on a few other aspects, obviously. There's not only technology that is going to come to play, it's going to be the way we work, it's going to be really how we're going to educate the people, how you're going to educate the population, and how the policy is also going to come to play. That is going to determine a lot in the overall, we used to call it ecosystem, but in the overall social system then she was referring to. There's multiple aspects that you need to consider here. Going back on your question and to re-highlight a little bit the concept, definitely new technology are gonna be, from a technical standpoint, the solution for the reduction of emission in the hard-to-abate sectors.
I really like the fact that you've touched on this sort of system, deep system that is needed to actually address the challenges we have. And Omar, maybe slightly more technical, we've seen AI, the rise of AI. We've seen solutions, I think you touched on satellite capabilities there. From our organizations uses satellites to help the aviation industry identify the sort of quickest routes. You've got technologies such as digital twins and several other technologies that are really coming to the fore. What are you seeing in this space of sort of advanced technologies? Are there any particular one type of technologies that you're seeing as maybe moving at a faster pace than others?
Sure. So one thing we're privy to is digital transformation projects, and just maybe sharing some you can say case studies we've stood on was one based out of Germany, surprisingly. So one was I do recall this company Henkel, which is a large chemical yes, very well-known company based out of Germany, and they're a large chemical plus consumer product company. So one striking thing about their digital transformation initiative was it stemmed from the, you can say, from a sustainability goal which they're trying to achieve. So using their existing, you can say, equipment and machinery, what they did is they retrofitted their machinery to be not just based on usage of fossil fuels, but actually they can be used with electricity at the same time. So they then went on to actually deploy renewable energy sources as part of their, you can say, sustainability goals to actually turn on those machinery. Not just that they stopped that, they actually took on the role of deploying a digital backbone, which allows them to use digital analytics to identify where wastage is done in terms of water or electricity, etc. So based on analytics or coming up with AI to actually guide the management where they should optimize or in terms of operations, or even identify where wastage is actually done in the processing unit. They used a digital transformation backbone as well as AI to identify that, thus ultimately leading them to, of course, achieving their sustainability goals. So it was with economical, you can say, benefits, operational benefits, as well as, of course, environmental benefits as well, all in one, rolled into one solution based on digital transformation, as well as using a hybrid approach to turn on their machinery.
Wow. I saw some statistics somewhere that that were saying that AI and digitization and governmental policies could actually reduce as far as 35% of emissions if the policies are geared towards technologies and innovations and solutions. And I think there, Alessandro, you touched on behaviors, and actually individual behaviors can contribute to reductions of some of these sectors. And I think there were some statistics out there that were talking about as far as 11% could be reduced from just behaviors. Dr. Estelle, maybe let's touch on individual choices and individual decisions that we make, and your thoughts there in terms of how do we incentivize and motivate people to actually make decisions that are geared towards decarbonizing our sectors.
Okay, so now we are talking individuals, individuals.
We are.
Okay, this is then another story. So I think we need the good examples, and we are missing good examples in the world, really good example worth to be scaled up. And for me, so behavior change, it means change in the consumption patterns, but it would also mean change in what do we do with our money. And I think we should look for the most cost-efficient ways to reduce CO2. And again, now coming from a country, from an industrialized country, Germany, I think we spend a lot of money trying to avoid CO2 in Germany, also individuals. What we should do instead is taking some money and then putting this money, bringing this money to the global south, and really helping the global south to avoid and reduce CO2 emissions, and we would have much lower CO2 avoidance cost in that case. So I think I'm absolutely in favor of changing behavior. Yeah, what do I do in my daily life? But I would also argue for let's spend money in a different way. That also would help a lot. And we have huge funding gaps, yeah, in particular in international climate finance. And we need the private sector, not only companies, but also private people. We need the one who are the CO2 emitters, yeah, and they have to somehow pay for that, and they should pay in a global way.
Amazing. So we have a question here, and this is going to be for all the panelists, which is what policies and incentives can promote sustainability in hard-to-abate sectors? Maybe we can start with you there, Alessandro.
Yeah, I'm gonna contribute with a couple of point of view, if you will. Obviously, you can start supporting the development of the technologies, in particularly. We were mentioning before the industrialization phase where the real cost is going to come to play there. You can start from that side, okay, and support really the implementation, the development of the technology. That's one way to do it. There's a second way to do it, which is coming from the other side of the value chain, is how you're going to generate demand, the real demand for really, I mean, the solutions, okay? That is an important piece because generally to create demand you need to work extremely hard, not too much on the incentive side, but to create the condition that solution is going to be sustainable from an economical standpoint in due course of multiple years, which means most probably in the majority of the case how you're going to support the creation of the infrastructure that is needed to certain technology to take place. Those are my two contributions. There's much more to say, but obviously there's going to be beautiful contribution coming also from them.
I definitely would love to do a deep dive into the implementation aspect and then how do we create demand, because that's a whole different topic altogether. James, what are your thoughts from the aviation perspective?
I mean, I think in general governments have a couple basic tools. I mean, we can tax behaviors that we want to disincentivize, and we can subsidize behaviors and activity that we want to incentivize. And the question is, really understand the systemic level of what are the core areas that need subsidies and what need disincentives to shift behaviors. So, for instance, you know, you asked the question, are we moving fast enough? And I think that was around renewable energy. And I mean, I'll say no, in my opinion, but I'm also an impatient person. So I think no matter how fast we're moving, it's not fast enough. I think one area where as a world and a technology developer, we're pretty proud of ourselves with the deployment of electric vehicles. However, in 2022, the new cars being sold, 10% were electric vehicles. That's great, but in terms of the deployed fleet, we're still in the very low single-digit percentages. And we've been at this for 30 years with, as I said, initially hundreds of billions of dollars going into it. So what are some of the ways that governments can support this? I think clearly, and some of the work in the US and in where I live in California, we offer subsidies for people to acquire electric vehicles. Great, except now we're starting to see a softening of the demand for electric vehicles. And a lot of that's driven by you have charging infrastructure that's really needed for your electric vehicle to be a joy and useful. And in the US, Tesla's done a great job building a privatized charging system. And I think most Tesla owners are quite favorable with that. But everybody else is out on your own. And there's stories and statistics about, you know, people driving electric cars going to a charging station and half of the chargers are down. So that seems like a phenomenal place for government to deploy a whole lot of capital, generate a lot of incentive, generate not just incentive to deploy more charging stations, but generate incentive for companies to make sure these charging stations are being upkept and rehabbed and repaired when things break. So I think there's definitely a lot of areas. Within aviation specifically, I think aviation as a whole is at a different stage in the technology development and maturation phase. And I think what governments can do there is do better to incentivize effectively risk-taking. And that is, you know, fund earlier stage companies, more of them in higher dollars. We need 10,000 ICT funds doing this type of work. That's the only way you're going to get coverage to explore the different energy mixes and the different types of solutions, is you've got to have diverse portfolios funding the risk-taking in the areas where it matters most.
Omar, it looks like we're going to need ICT fund to help all of us. What are your thoughts around policies and incentives?
Sure. So, I mean, we as an organization or an entity, we're based on public policy, which stipulates the revenues of any telecom operator in the country and for the benefit of society in a similar way that public policy related to climate change is imposed on the private sector for the purpose of benefiting, you can say, the climate in itself. But to give you some context on public policies which we've seen that we consider are successful ones, maybe three cases which we've seen. One was British Columbia. So in 2008, they came up with a carbon tax, which is at $10. And it's increased ever since till today, $50. There was a lot of, you can say, fear that this could have, you can say, a negative effect on the economy. But what they did was a balancing act. So of course, public policy is always a balancing act. So what they did was that they kept the, you can say, overall tax burden in British Columbia stable without actually increasing the tax on the general public. So what happened was that they created jobs and enough economic stimulus as well as achieving their, you can say, sustainability goals. Lima, for example, in Peru, what they did was in 2010, they decided that they wanted to enact a solution to their nightmare traffic congestions, which they have. So what they did was they enacted a law which is to promote bike lanes across the city. And during COVID, they managed to roll out 100 kilometers worth of bike lanes. It was profound once people started using them, that the reduction in the traffic congestion would happen in Lima. So that was another, you can say, public policy adoption. What they have now is that they've set up 1,300 kilometers worth of bike lanes laid out as a plan all the way up to 2030, with the purpose of course, achieving sustainability goals as well as, of course, reducing the burden on the traffic system. We've also seen Colombia as a country. What they have come up with was the Green Code policy for the construction industry. Based on that, they've also attracted the IFC to support that with, of course, tax cuts for the construction industry. With the people adopting, you can say, Green Code and building, you can say, certifications. What they have achieved is 100.5 million square meters of Green Code certified building and real estate within Colombia, which was a prime, you can say, example of adopting public policy in the first place, and then, of course, reaping in the rewards down the line. But it has to be a balancing act where you balance economical, you can say, gains, as well as, of course, sustainability goals in the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Estelle?
Okay, so policy and regulation is another topic for another panel. So I'm again going to another level. So going back to the inclusive industrialization, yeah, and what kind of policies would we need? What kind of incentives? So at the end, so from a global perspective, what we need is a fair deal between the global north and the global south. I'm not talking about single companies at the moment, not at all, but this is what we would require. And just to name two examples. Unfortunately, 14 years ago, that was the COP29, so in Copenhagen, unfortunately, we abandoned the idea of a global cap-and-trade system. That would have solved many, many, many issues, but I think we never managed to agree. Going back into the direction of a cap-and-trade system and really applying the same emission right to any person in the world would help a lot. Considering the NDCs of the different countries and building a kind of cap-and-trade system around these ideas would be very, very helpful. And there are some ideas of climate clubs around here at the COP as well. So it would be worth thinking more about that and integrating, developing and industrializing countries into one system would also help a lot really to finally come really to cost-efficient solutions. Then another idea that goes back is differential costs. This idea goes back to the Montreal Protocol that is managed by UNIDO until today. And why not applying this logic, which helped to close the ozone problem, to solve the ozone problem years ago, to apply this in other contexts? Why not paying the differential costs, for example, of CCUS in developing countries by industrialized countries? That would also be an approach which would really be in the logic of a fair deal between the global north and the global south.
Wow, wow. We've got 3 minutes left, and I think we'll be heading into some closing remarks. Perhaps, James, if we start with you for just some thoughts, closing remarks, in particular from the aviation perspective, and if there's any information that you can give our audience here in terms of what we can do to actually help or work better with the aviation sector.
Well, let's see. If you really want to make a huge impact on reducing CO2 in the aviation industry, Don't travel. That's probably that's free. Yeah, that's free. That's easy. But obviously, I think maybe on a different perspective, I think we're definitely at a time in a lot of sectors, and in particular in aviation, where we have huge challenges but huge opportunities. And our perspective always is that if you want to have an impact, the best way to do that is to leverage market dynamics, is to build a product that people deeply love and want, right? And we think it is not enough just to decarbonize something, because typically there's costs associated with removing CO2. And so the best thing you can do is build a product that's just plain better, right? And hence why our company starts by focusing on this regional travel. So again, instead of spending hours and hours going to big airports and waiting at big airports and getting delayed on the tarmac at big airports and arriving early only to be told your gate's not available yet and you can wait on the tarmac more, we think the unlock there that's going to accelerate the adoption of that product, which has a big impact on CO2 emissions, is again just making that travel experience a heck of a lot better. And I think if we can build technologies, and it's not just the technology, it's the configuration of the technology in a product that has a dominant capability in the marketplace, and again makes people's lives better, I think that's where we're going to unlock a lot of opportunity. That's where we'll see much more rapid adoption. That's where we'll see cutting of emissions the fastest.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to the panelists. If you could join me in giving them a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and for closing remarks now, I would like to introduce my very good friend, Weishi Gong, the Chief of the Investment and Technology Promotion Division and Coordinator, Investment and Technology Promotion Network at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. Weishi, please.
Thank you, my brother Namir. It is my honor to be with you today in the last minute. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I have indeed enjoyed the intensive panelist discussion. Wonderful. I haven't seen such diversified but focused on the common goals discussion for years. Extremely exciting, extremely, let me say, it makes sense, make different voice heard. So thank you for being part of this special GMIS flagship event. It has been a time of important conversations led by UNIDO and UAE Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology, facilitated, organized jointly by GMIS and UNIDO. I want to give a big thanks to His Excellency Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber and His Excellency Gerd Müller for their leadership and excellent support. The Climate Action Fund is about supporting ideas that fight climate change. And the World Industry Day is a great way to make sure industries grow in a way that's good for our planet. Our talks today about renewable energy and the fifth industrial revolution have been like turning on a light in a dark room, as clearly stated by Namir before. I appreciate it very much. We have seen how smart ideas and clean energy can make industries upgrading and become more competitive. Industries can be much friendly to our planet. However, it should be more inclusive. It is not just about being eco-friendly, but it's about human-friendly as well at large. The most important thing for us is leave nobody behind, leave no country behind. It is industry should be benefited for all people involved. It is about making positive change that help both industries and our environments. Exploring those exciting possibilities, we have realized that the future of industries can be not only efficient, but also kind to the earth, creating a win-win situation for everyone and every country involved. Thanks to all panelists, leaders, CEOs, experts, and organizers for your valuable thoughts. Your different ideas have made our talks richer and showing us the importance of working together for a better future. Allow me to take this opportunity and moment to say a big thank to you, to the entire teams who made all this happen under the leadership of Namir. Thank you, my brother. I know how hard you work through the years. I'm happy to be with you. A special shout out to the folks who organized this event from both the GMO and UNIDO. You worked really hard, planned everything carefully, and your dedication made this event a success. Teamwork made this event something special, really. As we all complete this event, let's keep the energetic power going ahead. UNIDO is committed to make industries cleaner and better for everyone. Events like GMIS help us share ideas and work towards a world where industry can help all live better. Remember, our journey towards a cleaner and better world is a team effort. Let's continue working together for a future that's good for everyone. Allow me to refer one thought of the panelists here. Let's change for the inclusive and sustainable future industry with action, today and jointly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Our session is now concluded. Thank you all for attending. Thank you to both our co-chairs, our panelists, our speakers, and of course, our attendees. Thank you to our team. Ritu, special thanks to you. And thank you for the UAE Pavilion for all your support. Thank you very much.